Okay, so this is going to be a long one. So if you're not ready for a long video, maybe come back later. But for the rest of you, maybe grab something to drink, some sort of snack or something. But this is going to be a very long video. My plan is to have this go live on Christmas. So Merry Christmas to everybody who celebrates. But this is going to be a video on my Barlows. Now, as most of you know, I'm a big fan of the Barlow pocket knife, and I have a whole lot of them. And in this video, I'm going to be showing probably about 90% of them. There's some that are in like a display case that are old, and then there's some that are probably just hiding somewhere. But this is most of my Barlow collection. And I figured I'd start off here with one of the most carried knives that I have, and that's my glitter gold TC Barlow here. I have carried this a whole lot because I really like it. Some people would call the gold a little, I don't know why it's not wanting to focus. Some people would call the gold a little bit gaudy, or they wouldn't like it because it's a knife and it's, glitter gold and everything. I don't care. I really like it. I think the glitter gold's cool. That's just my opinion on the matter. But you can see here my patina on the blade there from cutting, food with the knife primarily. And then, the bolsters and everything are a little scratched up. My phone's really having issues with focusing right now. I hope that stops. You can see the bolsters are scratched up and everything. There's some uh, pepper spots on the back spring here, just from being in my pocket while I'm like sweaty and stuff. So this is a knife that I've carried a whole lot, and I figured it was a good one to start with because Great Eastern Cutlery TC Barlow is kind of, and I think a lot of people's opinion, including mine, is kind of the gold standard of what a Barlow pocket knife should be. It's a really well made knife. It's got steel bolsters, steel. Does this one have steel liners? Yeah, this one does have steel liners. And carbon steel blade, 1095 carbon steel, and the action on these is really good. Of course, fit and finish is pretty much what you come to expect from Great Eastern Cutlery. But the glitter gold Barlow is the TC. Now I have two TCs from this run. I have Charlie Campagna's SFO, and then I have this one. And this is the one that I wanted that wasn't an SFO, just because I thought it was, kind of cool to have the glitter gold acrylic. But anyway, that's my glitter gold TC Barlow, a knife that I really have carried quite a bit. I really like it. The only thing that, is a little bit of a downside of having the glitter gold acrylic is it doesn't age like a bone or a wood handle would. But I just really like the, glitter gold, and it's something different, whereas most of my knives are either bone or wood. Let's just do this one next. Why not? So this is an SFO for Red Hill Cutlery, a knife that I'm incredibly disappointed with because if you look at the handles here, they look really good. This black saw cut bone, they're done really well. It's got the state of Kentucky there on the bolster, which is interesting, and a number because this is a SFO and limited production and all that. This is a easy open blade shape, but the main thing that I'm disappointed with this one is the action on this blade. Now closing, it's actually not horrible. I mean, it's not good, but it's not horrible. But opening, there's no snap at all. Opening it. So this knife, the back spring on it sucks, or the liners are too tight. Something's wrong with it. It really sucks because, like I said, the bone handles here are really good looking. At least in my opinion, I think they did a really good job on the handles on this knife. But the action on the blade on the opening of this knife is awful. Um, I'm also not a huge fan of the etch, but I kind of figured I could probably get rid of that if I wanted to. And I still probably could, but what's the point if I'm not ever going to carry it or anything? This is made by Baron Son. I don't think I said that, in Alabama. This is, I think, an older one. They have some different tang stamps. So I think this one's a little bit older. But the fit and finish on this one is not amazing. Like, honestly, like the fit's pretty good. There is a little bit, this bone here is a little bit proud. It drags on your finger a little bit. But really the main issue is just the action on this knife is awful. Like, I don't want to ever carry this pretty much, which once again sucks because the handles look awesome on it. But that's a disappointing knife. I think I got a fairly good deal on it on eBay though, so I'm not super worried about it. Um, but a little bit disappointing. A more recent knife that I've acquired is this Taylor Eye brand. Taylor Eyewitness. Eye brand is a German company. This is a Taylor's Eyewitness Barlow. This is a super basic one. I got it from what's his name? One all about pocket knives. I don't remember. Well, that sucks. I got it. Oh, James Brand. That's who it was. James Brand? No. James Company. The James Company? Something like that. James something, on allaboutpocketknives.net, I think. He sells the Sheffield made knives. He's got Taylor's Eyewitness, and he's got Arthur Wright and Son. So this was like $35. Standard. I think it's I forget what they call this wood, but it's just a wood handle. Bolster, I think, is steel. Really cool detail on the bolster with the Eyewitness Sheffield, England stamped there in the bolster. That's really cool. I like the detail on the step down on the bolster. It's a very fancy looking bolster. And then the action on this knife is superb. This is just a really nice Barlow knife that you can get for like less than $40, and it's a really nice knife. My main problem with it is it's just stainless steel. It's not carbon steel, which is what I would prefer. But for people who don't care about this is a excellent pocket knife, and I would definitely recommend it to people. I have often thought about picking up a couple more of these and just giving them to people as like gifts because they're really well made pocket knives. Um, but yeah, so Taylor's Eyewitness, they make some fancier ones, but this is the bare bones, just like the working man's knife, and it's like $35, something like that. From James Brand? No, not James Brand. I already said that. James Company. I'm thinking it's James Company. I don't remember. Um, but yeah, so really nice knife, really affordable. Definitely recommend it to people who want stainless steel knife or whatever. Um, or if you're like me and you just want to check out more knives, that's also an option. I said earlier about having another C from the same run as the Glitter Gold one, and that's this Charlie Campagna SFO TC Barlow with sepia saw cut bone, I believe is how it's pronounced. I bought this secondary market off eBay, and I don't want to talk about how much I paid for it. It was a couple years ago now, but this was like my grail knife. Like, I really wanted a Charlie Campagna SFO TC Barlow. Now, my actual grail knife at this point, I think, is a ancient TC Barlow, but that's probably not going to happen because some of those are going for like $1,000, and I'm just not doing that anymore. I'm not paying ridiculous secondary market prices for Great Eastern cutlery knives when there's a lot of other good options out there. Now, if I can get a fairly decent price on one on the secondary market, or if I can get them on a drop, I still go for the Great Eastern cutlery knives because I absolutely love them, and I think they're like, as far as I'm concerned, like when it comes to production knives, they make the best pocket knives out there. But this is another TC Barlow. I've got some oil on the blade here. Let me wipe that off real quick. Um, if you'll excuse me for a second here. Um, so on the blade it says genuine Barlow. It's not wanting to pick up that etch. There we go. Genuine Barlow TC knife. And I think this is like a copy of his first etch on a TC Barlow from whatever year that was. This is a 2021. Same with the glitter gold one. I have carried this one a bit, not as much as the glitter gold Barlow or, other Barlow knives, but I've carried it a bit. But recently, it's just been kind of hanging out in the tube. Or actually, this hasn't been in the tube. This has been in just like the Barlow Collection containers. Um, but this is a really nice knife. Obviously, all of these TC Barlows are. Um, Charlie Campagna always does a really cool write up on the tube. I should have grabbed the tube, which is another reason why you want a Charlie Campagna SFO. Plus, he's not going to be around forever, unfortunately, and he's kind of like the. I think a lot of people, me included, look at him kind of as like this really cool like cutlery historian almost, especially with the Barlow. And since I'm such a fan of the Barlow, I really am a big fan of Charlie Campagna. So I'm really happy to have one of his SFO knives, even if it's not one of the more like valuable ones, because I don't necessarily care about that. I just wanted to have one. So I was talking about Arthur Wright a little bit. I have a fair amount of these because they're very affordable. They're like anywhere from like 35 to like $65 for the pretty standard ones. 65 if you get like the stag handles like this one has. And this is some really nice stag on these, whereas my stag on the other one that I have in stag isn't as nice. But it's kind of a crapshoot. But so Arthur Wright and Son makes, you know, fairly affordable Barlow knives and other knives in Sheffield, England. Let's see if I can show off that Tang stamp a little bit. Sheffield, England. This one doesn't actually say Arthur Wright and Sons. There's like different runs or something that have different Tang stamps on them. I'm not sure exactly what's going on there. Some of you may know, in fact. But this is just the clip point Barlow. Really love the shape of this clip point. Some people are going to argue that this isn't a Barlow because the bolster's not as extended as it's supposed to be. But as far as I'm concerned, it is still a Barlow because, it's the shape of a Barlow. The bolster could be a little bit longer, but I'm not one to really be super picky with what's called what. The only knife that I've ever been like, that they've called a Barlow that I've been like, that's not a Barlow, is the Boker Barlow Prime. Not a Barlow. It has a very short bolster on that knife. This is more elongated than most Arthur Wright and Son bolsters. So to me, this is a Barlow for them. If you want to argue with me, go ahead, I guess. But, in my mind, it's Barlow. But these are fairly well-made pocket knives for affordable prices for people like me and you that, work for a living and everything. So, well-made, super strong springs on these. Super strong action. So that's awesome. Like I said, I really like the shape of the clip blade. I think when I got this one, the very tip had been snapped off because these are very pointy blades. Let me see if I can find the ebony ones so I can show you how pointy these come. So this is how pointy they come. So they're very pointy. And that tip's very easy to snap off there, I imagine. Even just, trying to grind it or whatever. So I got this knife, was missing the very tip of the edge. I just kind of ground it. It's not a big deal. The stag on this knife is fantastic, in my personal opinion. I think it looks really good. You can see this blade does have a little bit of patina on it. carried this one a fair bit. I took this one on the trip to California with me, with a bunch of other knives too. I think the only other Barlow I brought was the Glitter Gold TC. Um, but really nice knife for a really good price for a pocket knife in my mind. These are really well made. Once again, whoever James Company, I think James and Company, I think that's it. Over there on All About Pocket Knives, you can get a lot of these Sheffield knives from him. And I definitely suggest picking some of them up if you've never tried out an Arthur Wright and Son knife, or one of these Taylor Eyewitness knives, just because they both seem to be really well made. I personally prefer the Arthur Wright and Son because of the carbon steel, whereas Taylor's Eyewitness is mostly stainless steel, it seems like. So since I have this one out, this is the same knife, but this one has ebony handles on it. And once again, I love that blade shape. I haven't carried this one at all. It's just kind of hanging out, waiting to be carried at some point. The ebony looks pretty good. There's a little line in it here, which is interesting, for some variation in the wood. It does have a crack here that it looks like they tried to stabilize a little bit, but I'll probably put some more soup. Come on, phone. I'm not paying attention to it being focused, but you can see there's a crack there in the wood. Looks like they tried to stabilize it, but I'll probably add some more super glue on top of that at some point. But yeah, so I mean, overall, don't expect super. They're not going to be fit and finished like Great Eastern cutlery knives, but they're well made, if that makes sense. Like, it's not a knife that you're going to ever have a problem with, like with blade play or anything like that. But, there might be a chip in the cover, or there might be some slight gaps or something like that. But it's a knife that's well made for its purpose, in my opinion. Meaning, this is a knife that you buy for like $35, $40, you throw in your pocket, you carry for 25 years and use it every day, and it'll last. So I love the Arthur Wright and Son knives, but let's talk about something else, because I have more of the Arthur Wright and Son knives coming. But for right now, let's talk about something else. So collectorknives.net, he does some interesting stuff. He had Lion Steel make these knives for him. This is an SFO for collector knives, but he had Lion Steel make these modern Barlows, pretty much. It's a Barlow, but it's held together with Torx bolts. Now, some people would call this not a Barlow, but I mean, it is still a Barlow. It's just held together with screws instead of pins. So, pretty cool knife. This is the round head. There's other ones. But this is the round head, and this one's in stag. And the stag on this one looks wonderful. My personal opinion. Let me get a little bit closer look at it there. Stag looks wonderful. The bolsters and frame of this knife, I believe, are titanium. So that's cool. The blade is M390. So you get that higher end blade steel on these. And the action is really good. These actually have a stop pin in them so that they don't end up with blade rep. You can see the pin down there to stop the blade. It interacts with this blade choil here to stop the blade. But these are like $50 maybe nowadays. I think when I bought them, they were around 120. Definitely worth the price for the M390 blade steel and the titanium bolsters and frame. Especially if you get something like the Stag, it's just really, it's really cool. But these all seem to be pretty well made, at least the ones that I have experience with. And the actions on them is really nice. And, if you're somebody who wants to take a dip into like the traditional pocket knife world, but you're not ready to do the carbon steel thing, or you have a phobia of sharpening a knife or something, maybe you want that M390 steel. But yeah, really cool knife, really well made. Collector Knives and Lion Steel did a really good job on these. Overall, really good knife. 2019, Case did the Barlow as their vault knife. They just recently brought back the Barlow to regular production, which is where it should stay forever. But in 2019, it was their vault knife. And this was the most sought after version of the knife because this is the only one that they did in carbon steel. This is supposed to be carbon steel with saw cut bone. Now this side looks more saw cut, but it's also like black. And then this side's almost more smooth. Now some people got really good saw cut. I unfortunately did not get this really good saw cut. But it's an alright knife. They actually did a pretty good job on the Barlows in 2019. I think this one had a little bit of blade play and I had to fix it, or I felt like I had to fix it. The blade shape on the clip blade Case Barlows is interesting to me because it's like, it feels very chunky compared to like a lot of clip point Barlows. So I do find that interesting. Um, but yeah, so this was the most sought after Case Barlow of the line. You do got two blade here. It's got a little pen blade. I carried this a fair amount before I ended up with like the Great Eastern Cutlery Barlows and stuff. And it is a fairly good looking knife. I just don't carry it anymore, really. But yeah, fairly decent knife. Definitely cool to have in the collection. I'm happy Case has brought the Barlow back into regular production. And I'm hoping they'll do a bunch in carbon steel with, bone handles. But we'll see what they do. Next, I'm going to put what I call my BS Ancient Barlow. BS because Baron's Son, and Ancient Barlow because I kind of artificially aged this a little bit. So basically, this is the maroon stag bone, I think is what it's called. Smoky Mountain Knife Works exclusive Baron's Son Barlow. And what I did is I dipped the whole knife in boiling apple cider vinegar to turn these blades into, gray or darker and everything, to just put like this dark finish on them that makes it look like this knife has been used for a long time, or kind of makes it look like that. Obviously, if it was actually used for a long time, you'd end up with like, a bunch of black spots and some shiny spots and all sorts of stuff. There'd be some variation. But that was a good way to artificially age the blades. Um, this knife is really cool. It's actually really well done. I'm very happy with this knife. And especially since I think it was like $40 or maybe even less than that for these. I mean, it's a really nice Barlow. It's made in the United States. I don't necessarily love the shield, but I mean, for the price of it that it is, you can kind of deal with it. I did try to stamp my initials in the bolster here. It didn't turn out super good, but honestly, I kind of feel like that's pretty representative of how somebody back in the day would have stamped their initials on their knife. Just quick and dirty, pretty much. So there's my initials. Knives actually fit together pretty well. It did have a crack in the handle, but that kind of adds to what I was trying to do with making it look, artificially aged. I don't know if you can see the crack anymore because I covered it with super glue. But there was a crack there, covered it with super glue. Artificially aged the blades, artificially patinaed the blades. And I have like cut an apple and stuff with this, and it will, I think, darken more, which will be cool. But I haven't carried this a super amount yet. But I do occasionally throw it in my pocket because I think it's kind of neat what I did. Now, that being said, I'm not always on the side of, I don't know if on the side's right, but generally speaking, I'm more of the opinion that you should just use your knife and let it, change over time. But this was kind of an experiment, and I like the way that it came out. So if you would want to artificially patina knife blades, boiling apple cider vinegar does a really good job. And if you have a knife that has steel everything, it will artificially patina all of it. This has nickel silver bolsters and stainless, or they might be stainless bolsters, but the rest of the steel on this knife is stainless except for the blades, much like a case knife, which is a little disappointing, but you know, it's a Baron Sun. It was like $40, so I'm not going to complain. But neat little knife. I like the way it came out, and I think it's kind of interesting. Okay, another Great Eastern Cutlery here. This is the most recent acquisition from Great Eastern Cutlery. This is a 14 TC Barlow, and this one has the sheep's foot blade here. You can see there it's got the good as gold Titty Cutlery etch on there, which has some historical significance to it. Let me wipe off the blade better. Sorry if I'm coughing and stuff. I'm sick right now. It's got the good as gold etch there, which is, like I said, it has some historical significance to it. Sheep's foot blade, which is cool on a knife this small as far as I'm concerned. This is the 14, like I said. So you see there 14, and this was made in 23. I got lucky on a collector knives early reserve list, which doesn't happen to me very often, but I was super excited it happened to me with this knife because I really wanted one. Because I thought that the 14, generally speaking, I think the 14 is a little small, but with the sheep's foot blade, I thought it might be more usable. And I've carried this knife quite a bit. Not like a whole lot or anything, but I've carried it a few nights or a few days, and I really do like it. And I think they did a really good job on the saw cut bone on this handle here. It did have either a crack, or I'm not sure if it was a crack or if it was just some imperfection in the bone, but I did cover it with some super glue there. That's what that is. But this bone looks really nice. Like they did a really good job on the bone on this knife here. Steel bolsters, steel liners. No, brass liners this one has. Okay, brass liners. So, you know, the bolsters will patina and everything. But super, super cool knife. I really like the fact that this one has two blades, whereas the 14 that they did in 22 only has one blade. So you get a pen blade too, which is nice. But super cool knife. Really happy with it. Super happy that I got it on the reserve for the knife and was able to get one. I'm always happy when that happens. Let's go into something that's a little older. I picked this up at a flea market, Roots County Market and Auction or something like that. It's in Manheim, Pennsylvania. But I picked this up at a flea market. That one for like, I don't know how much it was. I think I paid maybe $10 for it, like at most. But this is a Camco Barlow. I believe Camco, some people have told me it was like the budget line of Camillus. So, you know, fairly well made knife and everything. Sheep's foot main blade, and you got a pen blade here too. This knife is in really good shape, except for the patina on the knife, which is fine with me because it's an old knife. But this is kind of more how knives actually age than when you like artificially age them. But if we compare the two knives here, you know, you're going to be able to tell which one's authentic and which one's forced. But you know, that's kind of whatever. Let me put this one back. This has saw cut Delrin, which is really kind of you know, pretty standard handle material for Barlows, especially the lower priced Barlows. But this knife was pretty well made. You know, it's got steel bolsters. The action on it is still really good considering this knife is an older knife. Now, I don't know exactly how old this knife is, but I would guess probably like the 70s or 80s. So not super old, but you know, it's a little bit of an older knife. Um, that's been well made, and I got for a pretty good price at a flea market, if I remember correctly. Um, okay, let's do another Arthur Wright and Son. This is my Arthur Wright and Son Sheepfoot Barlow is what I call it. They call it a Warncliffe. Um, but I have carried this one a whole lot. And you know, this was some stag that was less than ideal. So I did this kind of like saw cut scrimshaw type thing here. I haven't really carried it since I did that, so I still don't know how well that's going to hold up over time. But I really like the blade shape on here for most utilitarian desks and everything. And if I can get, you can see there's some scratches and patina and stuff there on the blade because I have used this quite a bit. Um, but I really like this knife for whatever reason. Um, and you can see the bolsters all scratched up and everything, which is pretty neat. Arthur Wright and Son uses, I think, C75 carbon steel, so it's not quite as high end as like a 1095 or something, but it's really not that big of a deal. With this being the sheepsfoot version, you can pinch it open, which is super nice, and I'm super happy about that. These Arthur Wright and Son Barlows don't have any half stops or anything, um, and they're just they're well made, but they're affordable, which is nice. And like I said earlier, the stag on these varies a whole lot. Because this stag is excellent. This stag was very disappointing because it's more like smooth. But that's okay because then I can do my own little thing, with scrimshaw or whatever. So really cool knife. Carried it a whole bunch. I think I carried this for like a month straight, not long ago. Really like it. Super utilitarian. Super easy to open because you can just pinch it open. Super strong back spring on it and everything. Just a really nice sized pocket knife. And I guess the sheepsfoot blade shape is really growing on me because I used to not really like it that much because I felt like it wasn't as useful for cutting, sandwiches in half, primarily, would be my example. Boker. This is a Boker Stag Barlow. I think this was a SFO for A.G. Russell. I think. I don't know. It's been a couple of years, so I'm not really sure. This has that reverse etch on the blade, which I'm not necessarily a huge fan of. But like all of the carbon steel Boker knives pretty much have this or had this. They don't really make this line of carbon steel knives anymore. It's like now you get the super high end stuff or the cheap stuff. There's no like in between like this was the Tree Brand Classic, I guess. But they don't make this like in between line anymore. This was like $75, which is a super reasonable price for this pocket knife, especially with the stag handles. Once again, they did the shield in the handle, which isn't necessarily super accurate for a Barlow knife. Usually you'd have your maker's mark or whatever, the name of your company stamped on the bolster, or it would just say Barlow or something, or it wouldn't say anything at all, and you would just say, do your tang stamp and call it good. Um, but usually not shield on Barlows, but I mean, it's okay. It's a well made knife and everything. The Boker Barlow is in between the 14 and the 15. Let me grab the 14 here. It's in between the two in size. Just do a comparison here between these three. It's actually closer to the 15 than I remember it being. But you can see the 15 is just a little bit longer. So the Boker is an in between for in between the 14 and the 15, Great Eastern Cutlery. And these are well made. I haven't had any problems with them or anything. I don't really carry the Boker Barlows that much. I have two of them. Um, and generally speaking, just another knife ends up winning out. But you can see I did carry this one a little bit. And I really do like the stag. It looks really good on this knife. The action on this one is really good as well. And overall, it's just a really nice uh, piece from Boker, really. Super happy with that Barlow. Okay, I got four Great Eastern cutlery sitting here. This is a Northwoods, Northwoods Big Bay. Um, there's a little bit of a story behind this one. This is the pocket slip, which is ridiculous. I won't carry it, and that's huge. But there's a little bit of a story behind this. Basically, um, my mom died in 21, and I made a post on the internet about it and everything. Um, and one of my Instagram friends sent me a message with a bunch of pictures of knives and was like, "Hey, which one do you want? I'll send it to you." And I'm looking through, and he's got, Madison Barlow, which is super, high end and everything. Another Northwoods. Um, the Big Bay, he had, I think, a Boker Barlow Prime. I'm trying to think of what else he had, but I saw this and I'm like, I don't know. That seems like it's about the perfect size for like a Barlow, and it's interesting and everything. So my first message was, well, you don't really have to do that. And he said, well, I want to. I'm like, well, if you really want to, I would like the Big Bay. And he sent it to me, and he sent me a note and everything. It was just super, generous and awesome of him and everything. So, obviously, I'll never get rid of this knife because I have the bit of the sentimental attachment to it and everything after that, obviously. But this is Northwoods Big Bay Barlow. It's got this burlap red micarta, red burlap micarta, whatever you call this. My phone really wants to focus on the background. Maybe I'll just move that out of the way. Just get rid of that. Will it focus on the tablecloth then instead of the knife? I don't know. But yeah, so the Northwoods Big Bay in red micarta, red burlap micarta. And these Northwoods knives are a little interesting because they'll leave like the heat scale on this part. Now I've polished it a little bit, so it's not really there anymore. Great Eastern Cutlery makes these. Right there, there's still a little bit of heat scale. As far as I'm aware, it's all steel except for the handles, obviously, which are micarta. Super cool knives, the Northwoods knives. Super sought after too. I'm not going to sell this. I just explained that, guys, so don't ask. Um, Interesting blade shape. It's like saber ground, kind of, instead of being flat ground like most traditional pocket knives are. You can see it's got Northwood stamped on the blade. It's got a long pull, really cool blade shape. It's like a long clip point with, it's kind of more of like a subtle clip point, but I really like it. It's a really cool knife and everything. It's got your butt plug stamp on the bolster there, which is cool. They actually call it an arrowhead, but to me, that's not what it looks like. Um, but yeah, just super cool knife. The Northwood series is a little bit more. I don't know if what he's going for is having it be a little more primitive, but that's what it ends up looking like. And for whatever reason, they're just super sought after pocket knives. But I really love this knife, and I really love the sentimental kind of story behind it and how I acquired the knife and everything. I'm gonna try this out, see if it focuses better on the knives. Another Great Eastern Cutlery knife. This is a 25, which is really small, or it feels really small. 25 Barlow. This was actually my first Great Eastern Cutlery Barlow. But if we compare it to a 14, it's very similar in length to the 14, but it's a lot wider. So it feels like it's a small knife, but it actually feels pretty substantial in your hands, even though you can only really get 3 fingers on it. It does feel fairly substantial. I really like the shape of this clip of this spear blade here. It's a very interesting shape. The blade on this is pretty short. I got rid of my measuring mat. I guess I'm just gonna bring it back because I feel like it adds better color to the video and everything. Plus, then I can do this and say, oh, it's got a 2¼ inch blade on it. Um, but this was a run from 2017. Yeah, 2017. I bought this on the secondary market, paid too much money for it, but it was my first like Great Eastern Cutlery Barlow. The fit and finish on this particular one is not honestly all that great, but it's cool. It's got this primitive bone, I think they call this, which is, pretty cool looking. But you can see here it's not matched up super well with the bolster there, but that may have been intentional. I'm not sure. And then the other thing with it is The hafting on this knife, whoever hafted it, it's like weird, like kind of wavy almost. I don't know if I'm going to show this on the camera here, but it's like almost wavy hafting, like right here, and then it like I'm not gonna be able to show it, but it's a little like weird. Like if you put it down, I don't know. It's just like it's like wavy. I don't know how else to explain it. It's weird. It like down and then up on the one side. It's just interesting. Um, but standard Great Eastern Cutlery deal here, 1095 carbon steel. This one has nickel silver bolsters. Um, really cool, handles on this knife and everything. Uh, I haven't carried this for quite a while, just because it's it's small. Although maybe I'll break it out at some point because it's a pretty cool little knife, and it was my first adventure into Great Eastern Cutlery Barlows. Um, other than just seeing them on the internet, obviously. Okay, let's grab something other than a Great Eastern Cutlery. We'll do this. I did a video on this not too long ago. This is the Remington Barlow from, I forget what year, like 94, 95, something like that. Does it say? I don't know. I saw it in a catalog at an antique mall, um, but I already had the knife. I now also have the Stockman that's in this series. But these were made by Camillus, just like the bullet knives were, except for these have carbon steel blades, I believe, and it does look like it, judging from the little bit of pepper spots there on the tip. Um, but this is a super long, slender clip blade kind of. I'll bring out that case now so I can give you an example of what I mean when I say this is like a really how did I how did I explain it? It's like a chubby clip point blade on the case. You can see this one's a lot more pronounced and everything on the Remington. A lot more pronounced blade shape. You can see here it's got the Tang stamp, very made in USA Remington. Um, Model number on it. Pretty good action on this blade. Does have a pen blade secondary here. Yeah, and I'm not sure if the bolsters on these are nickel silver. Probably nickel silver. Don't know for sure though. And then it's got these green saw cut handle covers, which look really cool. They are very much Remington. If you know anything about like the cartridge boxes that Remington has, they're very green and yellow, and this is very much Remington here. It once again has a shield. I'm not that upset about it, but typically Barlows don't have shields. But a lot of more modern Barlows end up having shields just because people are used to their pocket knives having shields, I guess. But pretty well made knife. I don't remember what I paid for this. I bought it off of eBay, of course. Um, but pretty cool knife if you can find these at reasonable prices. I certainly would recommend maybe checking one out. Okay. Kershaw Culpeper. I have two of these. This is more of a modern Barlow. It's really big compared to like your standard Barlow. Here's a 15. So it's quite a bit bigger than like your standard Barlow. This one's a little bit. This one's not my favorite. The action on it's not super good or anything. It's kind of lazy. Now, I don't know if that would change if I added some more oil to it and everything. But it's got this interesting clip blade shape, super pointy. I believe these are D2 steel. Yeah, this one's D2. I believe my other one's D2 as well. It's got jig bone handles on it, which is like a very obviously machined jig bone, whereas like I much prefer a more random jigging pattern because I think it looks better. Once again, you got your shield on a Barlow. Kershaw. This one has like weird copper. I don't know if they're actually copper, or if they're just like copper washed or copper coated or whatever bolsters. Because this knife's not that expensive, so I can't imagine they'd be solid copper. But who knows? Maybe they are. But Kershaw did a fairly good job on making, you know, a traditional knife here, a slip joint. Um, I do wish the action was a little bit better on this one. I haven't really carried this one. I don't think I've carried this one at all. The bone is a little bit, if I show it here, the bone has some slight issues up here near the bolster. And this knife, once again, has some shorter bolsters on it, much like the Arthur Wright and Son Barlow. So you know, some people are going to argue that this isn't a Barlow, but you know, I would say that it is a Barlow. So it's in my Barlow collection video. But anyway, Kershaw Culpeper. This one's a fancy one with jig bone and copper bolsters. Not super happy with this knife. I have another Kershaw Culpeper that I like more that we'll see later. Um, but you know, it's certainly a good enough knife. This is another Baron Son knife, and I believe this is a Smoky Mountain Knife Works exclusive. And this is the Beer Tender, which is a Barlow. Now, on the website originally, it did say carbon steel, but I believe this is stainless steel because I haven't gotten the blade to stain at all. So I think it's stainless steel. The action on the blade is pretty good. It's actually really good. I haven't carried this knife in a while, so I don't remember. But the action on the blade's really good. And then it's got these, instead of a pen blade, it's got this weird bottle opener thing where it's got a bottle opener, which does work. I've tried it. And then it's got this weird tip here, which isn't really anything. Usually they, you know, chop it off and grind it down to be a screwdriver tip. This is just a weird pointy tip. Like, I don't think you can really use that for anything other than just opening bottles. That being said, some people have said that they think that they just took a blade blank from one of their clip blades and ground it down into a bottle opener, which, I mean, fair enough. That's, you know, fine with me and everything. It's a more affordable knife. I don't remember how much I paid for it, but certainly nowhere in the price range of like a case knife or Great Eastern Cutlery. And once again, these are made in America. You do have a beer tap kind of etched, like laser etched into the bolster there. I wish it was stamped, but I don't think you can really stamp something that intricate on a bolster. But it looks fairly decent. There's nothing on the back side of the bolster. This knife's actually fit together really well. And I do have another one of these that's actually a gift for somebody that I keep forgetting to give him. So I need to remember to do that. But you know, pretty well made knife for the most part. Interesting, exclusive from Smoky Mountain Knife Works. And I certainly, you know, applaud anytime that Baron Son tries something new and we get new, interesting knives, pretty much. And I do like Baron Son. Some people really don't seem to like Baron Son. I like Baron Son. Sometimes their quality is a little iffy, but for the most part, I like Baron Son. This is another Great Eastern Cutlery 14 TC Barlow. This one was made in, I think, 22, yeah. So this one's made in 22. This is a single clip blade. Once again, it's got the good as gold etch there, which my light's not wanting to show you. Yeah, you can see there. If I can. It's got the good as gold etch. Once again, is a historical thing. TC, by the way, stands for Tidiute Cutlery. Some people think it stands for Tom's Choice because apparently Charlie did a Tom's Choice Barlow. But TC has always standed for Tidiute Cutlery. But I think that this bolster stamp is one of the coolest bolster stamps that's been designed, in my opinion. This is once again a saw cut bone, which is really what I look for in a Barlow, to be honest. I want saw cut bone handles, or just like wood. But I really like the saw cut on the um, sheep's foot Barlow they released this year more because it seems more like traditional Barlow saw cut to me. It's not as tight, the saw cut, and it's like darker, and I think it just looks cooler. Whereas this is more of a lighter dye job, and you know the saw cuts are really close, are a lot closer together and everything. This one does have steel liners and steel bolsters. Um, Clip blade, like I said, the action on this one's pretty good. Um, but I actually had this one in my pocket for a little bit today. Um, but your 14 is a little smaller than your 15. If you're somebody who for some reason thinks a 15 is too big, and not the perfect size, maybe try out a 14. Also, if you live somewhere that's a little bit more scared of pocket knives, maybe get a 14, if you can find one anyway. But once again, pretty much what you expect from Great Eastern Cutlery, well put together. Just a really nice pocket knife, pretty much. Okay, let's go to something else that's not quite as quality. This is an Imperial. Those of you who know about pocket knives or dig through boxes of knives at flea markets, you'll find a lot of Imperials because I think they made about 10 gajillion of them. And this is an Imperial Barlow. It's actually a decently well made knife as far as like the blades on them are good. They're made out of pretty good steel. They're very thin. So I feel like probably a lot of people have broken blades off because them guys back in the day would pry and all sorts of stuff with their knives. You find a lot of broken blades looking through those boxes at flea markets. Um, but fairly well made knife. It's just very cheaply made, meaning that this is one of those shell knives that has this whole like cover cover here is one piece, like the bolster and the fake plastic saw cut thing is like a shell, and it's held on with these tabs here. Is how it's held on to the liners of the knife. It's got these tabs that hold it on. So I think we call these shell knives. Um, but just a super inexpensive Barlow. This one's an advertising one, of some sort, or maybe like maybe this company was just giving out gifts to people. So and then put the company name on them and everything. Um, but you know, decently well made, but cheaply made also. Um, yeah, you can find a whole bunch of Imperials and everything around. Okay, I had to stop the video there for a second because apparently my phone has like a 52-minute limit on videos for some reason. I don't know. But this is a Northwoods. This is another collector knives exclusive, actually, or a SFO, not an exclusive. Um, Exclusives are different, I guess. But yeah, so this is a collector knives SFO Northfield. I'm having trouble talking today. Northfield Barlow, and this is the 77, which is I'm getting a little. So explaining the sizes on these, the 77 is a little bigger than the 15. The 77 in my mind is like the perfect size for a Barlow pocket knife. And this is the Yankee Barlow. And actually, I don't think this one was the SFO for collector knives. He did some other knives that run. He did like the Mount of Olives olive wood, which I kind of wish I would have chose over this because I had the option. And he did something else too. I don't remember what the other one was, but the Mount of Olives olive wood I think would have been super cool to have, and that's probably what I should have gotten. But at the time, saw cut bone just sounded so cool to me, and is typically what I think of when I think Barlow is saw cut bone. Um, but this isn't super saw cut like I was hoping it was going to be. It's almost more like a smooth bone. Come on, phone. I need you to focus on what I'm trying to film here. You can see the bolsters have Northfield, the NF stamp on them. These are nickel silver bolsters, brass liners, typical 1095 steel blade. The blade on this is still super shiny because I haven't really cut a whole lot of food or anything with it. I've actually carried the knife a fair bit. I just haven't really like cut a whole bunch of stuff with it. But you can see there on the bolster, like this has spent some considerable time in my pocket. I just haven't really cut any food or anything with it. But it's a very pretty knife. Probably in an ideal world, probably, the perfect Barlow as far as I'm concerned. It's got a spear blade. It's like a really nice size um, for a Barlow. The only thing that I think I would want to change is I don't want the super high gloss, the super high polish blade. I'd much rather have a satin blade, and I'd like the handles to be a little more saw cut. But overall, this is, pretty much the perfect Barlow in my mind, size wise, anyway. And I like a good spear blade when it comes to Barlows, um, as far as I'm concerned, anyway. Um, so, next, once again, case in 2019, the Barlow was their Volt pattern. So, I got a fair amount of these because I didn't know when they were going to do the Barlow again, and I'm a big fan of the Barlow. This one's stainless. It's in the Caribbean saw cut bone. I have a case peanut in these handles too. They're very pretty looking, as far as I'm concerned. Very pretty looking handles. This is a single blade clip point. Action on this one's really good. Um, and yeah, fit and finish on this one's really good too. Just a little bit thicker than the ancient bone or whatever it was one. I don't have that one anymore, but it's a little bit thicker than that, just thick enough to kind of feel okay in your hands, pretty much. Um, but yeah, just a fairly well made Barlow knife in stainless steel, and a reminder of Case's Volt pattern 2019 knife. Super happy that the Barlow's becoming regular production. It should have never left regular production. Okay, we'll just talk about these as a group here because why not? I have another one that's still in the package over here. So these are Novelty Cutlery Co. Bombshell Barlows. And it's basically a super cheap knife, very similar to the Imperial thing where it's like a shell knife, you can see. Um, but, they took some old pinup art and copied it and put it under the handles on these. So you've got a knife with some pinup art on the handles, and they came out really cool. So really cool to have. Not really something to carry or use or anything, but I think there's 4 of them, so I'm missing one. Maybe at some point I'll pick up the last one that I'm missing. Um, just maybe have them like a display case or something because they're kind of cool. But they're made in China. Smoky Mountain Knife Works sells them. You can find them on eBay. They're like $5. But the funny thing about these is my girlfriend and I were at an antique mall and we picked up a pinup calendar. I don't remember if she picked it up or if I picked it up, but we're looking through it. And the one pinup picture, I'm like, oh, that looks familiar to me. And I didn't think about it. And then once I got home, I'm like, oh, I know why that was familiar to me. That's one of the pinup arts that's on these knives. So just kind of interesting. They used real pinup art like that's out there on calendars and stuff and made like handles kind of out of it. Basically, I think how they did this is just, a clear piece of plastic with a piece of paper underneath it. So super cheap, but it's something that came out really cool looking. And especially if you like pinup art or just women in general, I guess, they're just cool to have. Um, but I'll move them out of the way. They're not really anything super sought after or anything, just something that's kind of neat to have, especially for the price of like $5 or whatever. All right, Rough Rider. This is a Rough Rider imitation tortoise shell single blade Barlow. Ooh, what's up with the action on this one? I feel like it's better than that normally. Okay, so not the best action on this one. It was a little better. Okay, Single blade Barlow, made by Rough Rider. I think these are about $12 or something like that. Super affordable knife, super, cheap way to get into a Barlow knife. It's got the imitation tortoise shell, which is probably acrylic or some sort of plastic. Looks, fairly decent. It's got your tortoise shell shield here. This one's got a satin blade, which I really like. I like the Rough Riders with satin blades. Of course, made in China, obviously. This is 440B, which is interesting. So it's a little bit better than the standard Rough Rider steel, which is 440A. So it's a little better than that. I think they went back to 440A. I don't think they use 440B on anything anymore again. This has pinched bolsters. It's kind of a little like trying to be a kind of like a fancy Rough Rider. No RR stamped in the bolster, so some people will certainly appreciate that. Just a super affordable, fairly decent little knife, like a lot of Rough Riders are. Occasionally in one of my videos, I'll get a comment about Rough Rider. Have you tried Rough Rider? Checked out Rough Rider? Rough Rider's really high value. Yeah, yeah, guys, I know about Rough Rider. Um, but in a lot of those videos, I'm doing videos on like higher end knives. Like one of those videos is the good alternatives to Great Eastern Cutlery knives. And in that video, I'm trying to show like high quality, like American made or German made or, whatever made pocket knives. I'm not trying to show, affordable Chinese made pocket knives. There's nothing wrong with them, but, that's the way it is. They're, they're cheap, pretty well made, and super, affordable. I had to stop the video again. My phone was running out of storage space. I guess the next time I do one of these like long, super long videos, maybe I should just do it live. That way I'm not worried about storage and everything. But I went through and deleted a bunch of old stuff. So there should be plenty of space. So I should be able to finish my video, hopefully. But the last knife I talked about was the Rough Rider imitation tortoise shell Barlow. I've got another Rough Rider here. This is a Rough Rider Reserve. I like how they're trying to copy the Northwoods with the butt plug shield there. But this is a knife I was really excited about when it came out. I haven't carried it a whole lot since then. But this is the Rough Rider Reserve Barlow. The blade shape on this is just super cool. It's very reminiscent of like the blade shape on like a lot of teardrop knives and stuff. It's like it like swells out and comes back in. Super cool, like fat spear blade blade shape. This one must have had some blade play at some point because the pin there is hit with a hammer. I have a tendency to do that. I think the bolsters are steel, just judging from how they look, although I don't know for sure. Brass liners, um, fairly well made, Barlow and everything. Once again, made in China, but these are like higher end Rough Riders. These are like $50, $60, a lot of these. And I like the Rough Rider Reserves. I think this is probably one of the most carried Rough Rider Reserves I have. And it's got this micarta that, feels less micarta-y because I think they polish it too much or something. But it's not grippy like micarta should be. D2 blades, so you get a little bit of an upgrade on the blade steel. D2 is one of the blade steels that I really like because it's affordable but pretty good at holding an edge and everything because it's a tooling steel. Um, but yeah, just a really pretty decent little pocket knife. I don't think you can get these anymore. I'm kind of hoping they'll release a Barlow like this but with bone. That'd be neat. But I don't know if they ever will. So Rough Rider Reserve Barlow, just a pretty good little Barlow knife. This one's a little bit. It's a little bit. I don't know if it's a Barlow, but I'm gonna put it here because it's got an elongated bolster. This is the Browning Steam Bank, I think. I think it's a Smoky Mountain knife exclusives. I'm not sure who makes it. There's a clip blade, and I think there's a Warncliffe version. I got the clip blade. I like the shape of this blade. It looks pretty cool. It's got a long pull there that looks pretty good. The swedge looks nice. The blade in general looks pretty good. This is just some stainless steel. I don't remember what kind of stainless steel or if it was even said. And I think this is about a $40 knife. It's got some micarta that feels very much like the micarta on this. In fact, maybe Rough Rider, the same company that's making the Rough Rider Reserves, maybe they're making these. Um, but, fairly decent little knife as far as I can tell. Feels good in your hand. Not sure if it's technically a Barlow because it's, a little bit different shape. It's not your typical shape, but it does have the elongated bolster, so I'm just going to throw it in here. But yeah, I mean, I haven't carried this at all, I don't think, but it was a knife that I saw and I'm like, that's neat. So I went ahead and ordered it. I do that a lot. But you can see the little browning deer there on the bolster. Um, yeah, I mean, a fairly decent, well-made knife, a fairly decently made knife, it seems, and, fairly affordable. I don't know what kind of steel it is, and I don't know how well it'll hold an edge or whatever, but seems to be fairly decently well made. A knife that I've had for a long time, I must have picked up at a flea market when I was a kid. It's this Cut Master Barlow here. He's got a clip blade there, very reminiscent of the Case Barlow clip point. It's Cut Master, made in Utica, New York. Let me see if I can get a good look at the tang stamp there. Cut Master, Utica, New York. Stamped Barlow on both bolsters. Um, this is a more affordable knife. So you're able to tell by the Delrin handles here. The saw cut Delrin that's not saw cut. But yeah, the pins are spun, so I'm not sure exactly how old this knife is. It's not super old because it's got Delrin, but I bought it when I was young, so I mean it's at least several decades old. At this point, at least 2 decades old. um, but it's probably older than that too. Um, but fairly decently well made, it seems. Um, and a knife that I probably would have carried a little bit when I was younger. I don't really remember necessarily what knives I carried and whatever, but yeah, just an interesting little thing there as far as my history of knives. Another case. This one was actually a gift from somebody on Instagram again. He posted it and said, "I don't ever carry this," and something else, and I was like, "Send it to me," like joking, and then he sent it to me. So kind of cool. Another knife I won't ever get rid of, obviously. This one's got Case stamped on the bolster, which is cool. I like these handles a lot because they're like thick, so it actually feels substantial in your hand when you're using it. And the handles in general just look really nice. I think this is like a canyon jig or something. I forget what they call this. But pretty cool little knife. Action on it's good. The handles are cool looking. Once again, stainless steel, obviously. Most of the Case Barlows were in 2019, but fairly well made. Once again, Case did a pretty good job on these Barlows for the vault release for them. I'm hoping they'll continue to do a good job on the Barlows now that they're regular production and everything. But yeah, just a nice little knife that was a gift from somebody, so I'll never get rid of it. All right, I got about, I don't know, 10 more to go here, 12 more to go. I don't know. We've got some to get through yet. Another Boker Barlow. This one's in beechwood, I think, maybe. I don't remember. Some sort of wood. Same clip blade as the Stag one. Different shield. This one's got black paint. And I think this shield's actually pinned, whereas I don't think the Stag one is, but it might be. But yeah, some wood handles and everything. Other than that, pretty much the same as the other one. Probably C75 carbon steel, same reverse frosted etch thing that I don't necessarily love, but you deal with it because you get a decently well made knife at a reasonable price. from this Boker series that I don't think they'd make anymore. But that's besides the point. But yeah, just another Boker Barlow, made in Solingen, Germany. More recent released knife. These are or were a big deal when they came out, and I got one. And I got one right when they came out. And this is the Rosecraft Blades. I need to stop holding it so far up. This is the Rosecraft Blades Barlow. It's got this sheepsfoot blade here that has a little bit of like a belly to it almost. I don't know how well you're going to be able to tell, but it does curve up just a little bit. Um, Interesting swedge on it, and just a sheepsfoot blade. I like the I like the shape of the blade for the most part. It's some D2 steel, which is nice. It's got your maker's mark there. I forget who made these. Andy something. Andy Armstrong, maybe. I don't remember. But there's his like maker's mark. It's in D2 steel. The bolsters, I think, are stainless steel. And you can see here it's got the Rosecraft blades. Just RC. I think they're trying to be a little. They're trying to kind of copy the TC a little bit, I think. But it's not stamped on, it's just laser etched there. So I don't know how well that'll hold up over time. The action on this knife is really nice. So that's nice. Fit and finish on it's really good. And this smooth, I need to stop dropping it. This smooth orange or red bone, whichever it is, looks pretty good. You could do some sort of scrimshaw on it, and I may at some point. I don't know. But fairly well made knife. I think it does have stop pin, like a lot of the more modern traditional knives do. Uh, but just a super well made knife for a pretty reasonable price, if I remember correctly. And it was a really big deal when they released these. They sold out pretty quick. But super nice little knife. Um, Rosecraft Blades is an interesting company because they make some traditional knives and they do modern designs and stuff too. This is the only, no, I have two Rosecraft blades. I have this and then I have some sort of, I think it's called like the Castoria or something. It's like a modern flipper with a button lock that looks like a Barlow. So I have that, but I haven't bought a whole lot of their knives yet. I think a lot of people liked the Appalachian Jack, was what it was called. I have another Baron Son Barlow here. I haven't carried this one at all, but I bought it, I don't know, a little over a year ago, 2 years ago, maybe even. It's got their walnut handles, which I don't like them because they're like super, they do some sort of varnish on it or something, and it's like weirdly shiny. So I don't necessarily like that. I like my natural handle materials to be more natural. This is Barlow carbon steel. That's why I bought it. Clip blade. I don't. Berenson very seldom does any other kind of blade than their little clip blade. They're weirdly shaped clip blade that angles down. Um, but you get used to it when you buy the Berenson Barlows and everything, as much as I do. Um, this particular knife is put together pretty well. The action on the blades is good, which is important to me. Yeah, pretty well made. This is what I was talking about with the Tang stamp. I think this is a little bit newer Tang stamp, and is the Tang stamp that they seem to be putting on all of their new knives these days. Um, but yeah, just a fairly well made knife. Once again, Baron Sons, made in the USA, made in Alabama. Um, and they make fairly decent knives for super affordable prices. If you're looking for traditional pocket knives or even like more modern folders, I think they have some stuff like that too. That's more affordable. This is the knife that got me started on Arthur Wright and Son. This one I bought on eBay before I realized that you could buy them from somebody on allaboutpocketknives.com. This one was their, I forget what wood this is, rosewood maybe? I don't remember. Clip blade. I did try to do the same apple cider vinegar thing for this. I didn't leave it in for quite as long, so it's like a little bit more spotty and stuff. Now this side looks good. The back spring on this one's carbon steel, so it actually aged a little bit or patinaed a little bit too. And I did some like wood burning kind of pattern on here, just for the hell of it, pretty much, just to make it mine for the most part. But this is what got me started on Arthur Wright and Son, and since then I've gone down a pathway where I have a bunch of them now. Um, but they're just really well made knives, and I like them. But this one I bought on eBay. Don't buy them on eBay. Buy them from James and Company on allaboutpocketknives.com. Okay, I've got less than 10 here now. All right, we're getting to the end here. This is my other Kershaw Culpeper. Where's the one I did earlier? Where'd I put that? There it is. I like this one more, but same knife. This one's got red smooth bone, which I prefer. If you're gonna have jigging that looks like this, I would just prefer a smooth bone. This one's got regular bolsters, no weird copper ones. These are nickel silver. And I think the action on this one's better. Ooh, yeah, the action on this one's a lot better. This knife does have a stop pin too. Because there for a second I thought it hit the back spring, but it has a stop pin. Same shield, super pointy D2 blade. Yep, D2. So D2 blade, super pointy. I don't remember. I think these are a exclusive for somebody. Maybe Atlantic Cutlery or something. I don't remember. But a really good looking knife from Kershaw. I haven't carried it because I have so many other options, but certainly a decent knife seems to be. And I definitely prefer it over this one. But I have both of them because why not? But definitely a decent little knife from Kershaw. Okay, what now? So, two more. I'm just gonna do both of them at the same time. Two more SFOs from Collector Knives. Once again, same thing as the round head, but these have different names. This is the Warhorse, and the Warhorse actually originally had these micarta handles on it, but I've fit these horn handles to it. And the Warhorse has two blades. It's got a clip blade and a Wharncliffe blade. They're both full-size blades. And at the time, I thought that was really nifty, so I went ahead and ordered it. This was the first one of these that I ordered, these Lion Steel Barlows. And I really liked it, but then I ended up wanting another one of these. So I believe that I ordered this one next. And this one's actually been used a fair bit, but all it's really been used for is cutting carpet. So you can see the blades really scratched up there from cutting some carpet in half and stuff. But this is the Dom. Is what this one's called, the Lion Steel Dom. Sheepsfoot blade. A lot of people like a sheepsfoot blade. I'm definitely sheepsfoot blade has definitely grown on me a little bit. But yeah, so both of these are M390 steel. They're both the SFOs for collectorknives.net. Mike Latham over there. M390 steel, modern titanium frame and bolsters. The handles on these are somewhat interchangeable, although the Warhorse, I did have to modify the horn a little bit to fit. But yeah, I mean, just neat little modern Barlow knives. And they're well made and super snappy action and some better blade steel and stuff. Definitely worth checking out if you like Barlows or if you're in the like modern folder world and you want to get into the traditional pocket knife world. So this was the first Baron Son Barlow I ever bought, and I have carried it. It seems like I have carried it a fair amount, but this was the first one I ever bought. Haven't carried it, haven't used it a whole lot, it doesn't seem. This one's got the older tang stamp on it that I was talking about. Fit and finish on these older knives seems to not be quite as good as the fit and finish on the more recent knives. This one's got a little bit of a special place in my heart. This is the knife I had in my pocket the day that I met my girlfriend. So, you know, a little sentimental attachment to this one a little bit. The handles on this one, this is their like bone stag or whatever they call it. Doesn't really look like stag. It looks almost more like worm groove bone, but it's really good looking. Like the handles on this particular knife are just fantastic looking. Um, Once again, that weird carbon fourth generation shield they put on all of their carbon steel knives for some reason. Um, but yeah, just a super good looking handle material there. Um, I don't know why it's not focusing on the knife. Um, but yeah, so this was the first Baron Sun Barlow I ever got. And then this has led me down a path where I have, what, 4 more Baron Sun Barlows? I don't even know. But I have a fair amount of them. All right, 5 more to go. Chinese made Queen. Smoky Mountain Knife Works bought the rights to use the Queen name. When they first released them, they actually released 2 trappers that were made by Baron Sun with the Queen name on them, which is fine because they're American made and everything. I don't think anybody's had a big problem with that. But then I think just to produce knives, they were using the Rough Rider factory to make the Queen knives. So this is a Barlow Queen, quote unquote, made in the same factory as the Rough Rider knives. You can see there it says Queen steel on the blade, and it's got Queen on the tang stamp there. If I can show you. It's got Queen on the tang stamp, it's got Queen steel on the blade. And then this is made out of 440C steel, so a little bit better steel than Rough Rider typically. But they're made in China and very clearly in the same factories the Rough Rider knives were. So this knife itself is all right and everything, but once you see that it's a Queen and it's made in China and everything, it's just a little weird. And then Smoky Mountain Knife Works recently, now they're having the Queen knives be made in America again. And they did the Jumbo Trapper and the regular Trapper, and there's the Stockman over there now. But I haven't bought it yet because it says it's stainless steel, and I really don't care for that. I would like to have one in carbon steel. This has the worm groove bone on it, which actually looks fairly decent. Looks very much like worm groove. It seems to match like really well, which is odd. But yeah, so just kind of an interesting part of like Queen history, I guess. We'll look back on this era and be like, wow, that's a Queen knife for some reason. Um, okay. So another Rough Rider here. This is the Rough Rider Bone Stag, Cinnamon Bone Stag with carbon steel, and it's a single bladed Barlow. And I like these carbon Rough Rider knives with the bone handles. They do rub black stuff, or some of the older ones do. It seems like they fixed it now, but the black stuff will rub off on you a little bit. Um, but you know, these are fairly well made knives, and I like to see them in carbon steel because that's what I prefer. So I'm definitely more apt to buy a Rough Rider knife when it's in carbon steel with bone handles for sure. In fact, more recently, I've kind of become this person that only buys the cinnamon bone stag Rough Riders. Although they've got some cool stuff coming, so I'll probably end up buying some of that stuff. If you look on Smoky Mountain Knife Works, like coming soon, or just type in Rough Rider, there's a bunch that are coming soon that sound super cool. So we'll see what I end up doing with that. But uh, I've been buying, a lot of the cinnamon bone stag carbon steel knives because I really prefer carbon steel. But that's pretty much what you expect from Rough Rider. It's like a less than $20 pocket knife that's put together fairly decently and everything. And you get the added benefit of having a carbon steel blade, which I definitely appreciate. Okay, I just did a video on this one the other night. It's not coming out until January, so you'll see that video in January. But this is the Baron Sun Kentucky Bourbon Barrel Bone Barlow. Um, that's an exclusive for Red Hill Cutlery, much like the crappy Devil's Cut bone or whatever, except for this one's actually done well. Um, the handles on it are a little gimmicky and weird. It's supposed to look like a barrel, and I suppose it does. But it's like some weird, like laser etch scrimshaw type thing. But the action on this blade is actually really good, so I'm happy with this knife. It is stainless steel, but I can get around that. It's got the cool one arm blade on it. Um, but yeah, pretty cool knife, interesting knife. Definitely like the blade shape of the one arm because of the history of it and everything. It being invented sometime after, I guess, the Civil War or World War One. I think it was the Civil War. But basically, this was designed so that with one hand you could just catch this on like your belt loop or your belt or something and pull it open with one hand, and then you could just close it like that or something. But obviously after both the Civil War and World War One, a lot of people were losing arms. So having a blade shape that came out, the one arm blade shape that you can open one handed, was a big deal at the time, obviously. But just an interesting knife, a little weird on the handle on this. I may try to dye this just to make it more weird. Um, but interesting knife, pretty cool. Actually put together fairly well. But, decent addition to my Barlow collection. All right, we got two more knives left. If you're still here, just stick with me. Got another case Barlow here. This is the very last one I bought, I think. This is Rogers Corn Cob Jig or something in this really nice, I think it's Mediterranean blue bone or something. And then it's got a spear blade, which is like my preferred Barlow blade shape. And then it's got Case USA stamped on the bolster, which is how a Barlow should be. And it's, just about thick enough to feel somewhat substantial in your hand. These Case Barlows are, I think, they're just a little bit smaller than the TC Barlow, the 15. Where's the Boker? How do they compare to the Boker in size? So they're almost the same size as the Boker. But so this was, one of the Case Barlows that I really liked out of the run because of the spear blade. Obviously, I wish it was in carbon steel, but I like the spear blade and I like the blue corncob Rogers jigged bone handles on it. I think they look really good. And I definitely, like I said, I prefer spear blade on a Barlow for some reason. Not really sure why, but um, another knife from the Vault release in 2019. All right, the last knife here is another Arthur Wright and Son knife. This one's a little bit different shape than their normal Barlow. Their normal Barlow like swells out at the bottom, which is actually really nice. It feels good in your hand and everything. But this is more like standard Barlow shape, which is interesting. But this is a Lambfoot Barlow made by Arthur Wright and Son, and this one's in ebony bone. It did have a little crack there, so I felt it was super glue. It does seem like the Arthur Wright and Son knives in wood do sometimes have some cracks. Um, oh well, pretty much, I guess. But yeah, just a Barlow knife with the lamb foot blade, which is a very traditional English blade. It's like a sheep's foot, except for it, you know, kind of, I don't know what you would call that. Like, I don't know the word to use there. I don't know what adjective I'm going to use there. But, the blade gets thinner as it goes out. Instead of saying relatively the same like a sheep's foot blade would. But this is a lamb foot blade. Now, there's a difference between like a lamb foot blade and a lamb foot knife. A lamb foot knife is like a sway back knife with a lamb foot blade. And I have a couple of them, but this is a Barlow knife with a lamb foot blade. Um, but yeah, just overall, just a pretty well made little Barlow with a lamb foot blade or a lamb's foot blade, which is an interesting blade shape. Um, but yeah, so once again, C75 carbon steel. Um, and Arthur Wright and Sons makes good knives as far as I'm concerned. But that's let me shut this one. But that's gonna be it here. I'm not gonna take up any more of your time. I don't know how much time I've taken up. Hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that. But that's gonna be it for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. And I hope you have a Merry Christmas and a good day.